afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Roundup. I'm your host, Fantasy Guru Urquhart. Right alongside me, back from his vacation, Gabe Henderson. How's it feel to be back, man?
Excited to be back. And like I told you pre-show, I promise you next week I will be back in my office.
All good, man. All good. Yeah, at least you're back closer. Last week was in New York, but back here, and glad to have you back. Because it's better to have the two of us. I feel like last week just did a mock draft breakdown, which y'all can check out for those that are interested in that on the Value Bets YouTube channel. Got all the shows archived and go back and watch all our shows. So yeah, man. First off, how's the trip? And just are you ready to get back in the swing of things?
Yeah, it was awesome. I think the most fun part is we did the drive back. So we're in upstate New York, as you know. We did the drive back in 2 days. So that final day went from Cincinnati all the way down to Houston again. So that was definitely something I hadn't experienced before, but it was a lot of fun. Got to stay in Joe Burrow land up there.
For sure. Yeah, and then a lot of news today for sure. Because training camp's opening throughout the NFL, so it's gonna be interesting to break all that down. And Jerry with us as usual. Saints camp opening up Friday. I know Jerry's fired up for that. But actually, with these headlines, we've got a couple of Saints blurbs in there. The Saints making waves today, including a move that really shocked me. And signed 3 players today, including an old familiar face, in which us fantasy players know well. Jimmy Graham, y'all. Jimmy Graham is back with the New Orleans Saints. Didn't play us down last year. Was out of the NFL. Coming back, though, this year with the Saints on a 1-year deal. Going to be really interesting to see if he can make the roster. He's going to be fighting with, the Saints tight end room now looks pretty loaded. You got Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, if you even consider him a tight end. He's listed as a tight end, doesn't really play many snaps from that position. And Foster Moreau. So with Taysom Hill being in the role he is, I think there's a chance Jimmy Graham makes it as the third tight end. And Jerry bringing up Trey Turner, Max Garcia, and Jimmy Graham. The signing that I liked the most was Trey Turner because he was a Pro Bowl guard not that long ago. And to me, one of the Saints' biggest weaknesses is at guard. So that's the thing that, from a Saints perspective, that Saints fans should really be fired up about. But for the fantasy purposes, we're gonna. Jimmy Graham, probably won't make much of an impact in real life or fantasy, but definitely an interesting move nonetheless. And Saquon Barkley signed his 1-year franchise tender. Well, actually, it was on a 1-year deal. I thought it was the franchise tender, but he got a little better deal than the typical franchise tag. So good for Saquon. Didn't get the money he was hoping for, but still, he got a little bit more than what he would have gotten on the tag. Kadarius Toney. Can't say I'm surprised. Undergoing knee surgery, week 1 in doubt. This dude, for those that play fantasy, already know Kadarius Toney is so injury prone. It's not even funny. And the injury pops up yet again, unfortunately. So the Chiefs going to have to look elsewhere on the depth chart. Got one of their receivers pinpointed as one of my targets for this week's Targets and Avoids episode featuring the wide receiver position. And our last headline is involving a wide receiver, Michael Thomas. Expected to be a full participant, looking like he's fully healthy. And Jerry's got another Saints question. Thoughts on Leroy Glover as guest assistant coach for the Saints? I mean, probably won't matter a whole lot, but it definitely can't hurt. I mean, I think it's positive, a positive thing to bring in a former player that was a huge impact back in the day, impact piece on the Saints defensive line. Was a star in the Jim Haslett era. So, I think it's good to bring him in because the Saints defensive line probably needs some mentoring because outside of Cam Jordan, very inexperienced. So, I like that. I like what they did there bringing in Leroy Glover. And then Jonathan Taylor. I know you mentioned Gabe before the show. He was placed on the PUP list, a surprising move. So, just, like my dad said, a lot of news today. Any thoughts on all this? And hopefully Graham has some fumes left in the tank near the goal line. I mean, he might, but he got Juwan Johnson, so I don't really see him having much of an impact. But maybe he's got more gas in the tank than I'm giving him credit for.
Yeah, maybe someone in the Saints organization knows something that we don't. That Jimmy Graham news was very surprising to see this morning. As soon as it broke, when we didn't have anything on it other than a vague statement, sent it over to my friends, and they were like, "Oh, the ritual 1 day contract, like awesome. Jimmy Graham finishes his
Yeah.
career with the Saints," and then it's like, "Oh no, this is a 1 year deal." So I know Jim doesn't seem to think that Jimmy Graham will make the roster, but you never know. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if he will or not. I was saying no, but it's like, I mean, I feel like if you're going to bring in a name like that, you don't just bring it in for publicity. It's like, if you sign someone like that, it's like, considering the Saints are serious, trying to contend, like if they were a team that's just kind of not really contending, trying to bring him in for publicity, kind of like the Bucks, like a team that's just looking rough. But if you're a team like the Saints, it's like you're trying to contend. You're not just bringing in people for a feel good story. They legit must think he's got something, because
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
think if they were doing it for publicity, they probably would have done it last year.
Yeah, I guess because of the quarterback situation not being as sound. But yeah, this year you got Derek Carr mentioned to see if him and Jimmy can get some chemistry going. And also, hopefully, it's nothing. As far as we know, Foster Moreau's in the clear, but maybe coming off of the Hodgkin's lymphoma, maybe he's coming along a little slower than expected. That may have played a part in it as well. Hopefully, Foster is all good, though. Hopefully, that's not the reason why they brought in Jimmy Graham, but just trying to context clues here, trying to figure
Yep.
out why it might be that they would have brought in a player that, I mean, didn't even play it down last year. So we'll see. But I mean, he's definitely was a fan favorite, and yeah, could be a mentor as well.
Could
So
be.
should can't hurt. Tight end room should at least be a decent part of the team. Probably not a strength, but also not a weakness. So, and then especially if you count Taysom Hill as a tight end, then it's a strength because of what he can do all around the formation. But yeah, a lot breaking here. So the theme of the day is wide receivers, though. We're gonna have some running back talk later. Gabe's got his rant planned about the running back position. It's just been the big topic, especially after Austin Eckler's alleged Zoom call with 12 other star running backs. So we'll see. We'll see if anything comes from that. Probably not. The CBA is pretty much set in stone. But let's talk receivers here. We're gonna start it off with our early round targets, and I see Gabe's targeting someone who's to me going a little bit low there. CD Lamb, I thought, considering how well he did last year, had the third-year breakout we expected. I was thinking he'd maybe be going in the mid-first round in PPR leagues, but he's going at the back end of that draft, at the first. So I'm kind of thinking CD is someone that is a target because he's only got room to grow entering his fourth season.
Yeah, for sure. And not only that, I think the offensive situation in Dallas is going to improve with, a new, I mean, it almost has to, given the circumstances. I don't think Jerry Jones is going to put up with mediocrity for much longer. But they've got a new coordinator there. And, I think one of the moves this offseason that's really flown under the radar has been adding Brandon Cooks. I know a lot of people are just brushing that one off. Oh, Brandon Cooks is old now. He's still 1,000-yard receiver on his day. And he's really going to take away some of the pressure on CeeDee Lamb. And I think CD will really succeed there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think so too. I think it's a good combo there. Dak Prescott should do better this year. And a new play caller over there should kind of freshen things up there in Dallas. So,
yeah, I was going to say, and it's hard for Dak Prescott to have a worse season than he did last year. I mean, say what you will about Dak Prescott, he's a very talented quarterback on his day.
Right. Yeah, I think the Kellen Moore system kind of ran stale over there, so it needed to change the scenery. But for those that are just tuning in, you're watching the Fantasy Roundup presented by Caesar Sportsbook, official odds partner of bet.NOLA.com. Head to NOLA.com/Caesars to get a risk-free first bet offer if you haven't done so already. But today we're talking wide receivers, who to target. who to avoid. Drafts are coming up, y'all. It's officially redraft season. We're out of dynasty mode. If you haven't done your dynasty draft yet, well, you probably missed the boat because now FIFA are on the redraft, doing this, one and done. You draft your team for this season. Don't worry about the future. Or, the future for this season. But don't worry about, is it going to be good in 2025? You're just worried about how they're going to do it this season. So my target here is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's a guy that's more popular in the dynasty community than the redraft community because he's so young. But I think the future is now for him. I mean, he proved it last year. He had over 100 receptions. And to me, he's someone I really like in the mid-second round because he's safe. Like, you know what you're getting. And he's also has upside. He's got room for growth. So I think he's a very good value in the middle of the second because the guys going around his range are usually guys like those questionable running backs like Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon, guys that, they're stud workhorse running backs when healthy, but you never know when they might get hurt. And then the other receivers in that range, a little less dependable from a target standpoint. A.J. Brown, yes, he's uber efficient, but are the targets going to be there? Devontae Smith's there, so it's kind of like, it's a little worrisome. Same with Jalen Waddle, it's having to be next to Tyreek Hill. So I feel like with Amon-Ra, he's the clear-cut top target. Jameson Williams is suspended the first 6 weeks. And him and Jared Goff have great chemistry. They showed it last year. They kept it going all throughout the season, very consistent. And he's a young receiver to where I think could take another step forward this year in what will be his third full season. Because in his second season, he had a remarkable sophomore season. No sophomore slump for Amon-Ra, and I think year 3 will be even better.
Let me say this, Spencer. This might surprise you. I think if Amon-Ra can stay healthy, and anyone who's watched the show knows that I really like the Lions going into this year. If Amon-Ra can stay healthy, I think he can knock on the door of being a top 5 wide receiver in PPR leagues.
Yeah, and you're getting him in the second, which is like a lot of times, the top 5 guys all go in the first, which is the consensus top 5. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and then CeeDee Lamb right outside of it there. And speaking of Diggs, I see you got him as an avoid there going a little high, which, I kind of agree because if you can get Amon-Ra, like, was that like 8 picks later, 9, 10 picks later, like I'd rather just do that. Because with Diggs, like, he's going to get targeted. They're pretty similar. But the thing that concerns me with Diggs is that, for one, he's getting a little older. He's around 30 now. And 2, it's like, are him and Josh Allen seeing eye to eye? They seem to be kind of at odds in the playoffs last year, and then the Bills just fell flat. I'm kind of down on the Bills as a whole this year. I still think Diggs will be productive for fantasy, but yeah, his ADP there does seem a little steep.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't think the Bills are going to be as good as they were last year. I'm concerned about the whole Josh Allen thing. And, I'm just concerned about the Bills as a whole. I get a weird feeling about them going into the season, especially in an AFC East that's much improved and an AFC that's incredibly tough now.
Yeah.
But I just don't see the talent around Stephon Diggs, at least out wide, as being any help to his fantasy game. Gabe Davis, I've said it before, he's not a competent number 2 in this league, I don't think. And they're going to be throwing to their shiny new tight end toy, as well as Dawson Knox, in the red zone a lot more, as we saw towards the end of last year. So I don't know. I've just got a weird feeling about the Buffalo Bills, and I'm not liking Stephon Diggs in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he should still be solid, but yeah, it might not be quite as good. And at this price point, you're paying for him to be just as good or better than he's ever been. And from just a target market share standpoint, he should be, but it's like with the addition of Kincaid, it could kind of change things up a little bit. So, and I really like Kincaid.
It was really weird toward the end of last year. We saw Diggs move away. He used to be a guy that would get a bunch of targets. Toward the end of last year, Josh Allen just wasn't throwing to him all that much in those last few games, it didn't seem, or at least not at the clip in which he had been. And Diggs really relied on the big play toward the end of last season. So there's just something about that and all the outside factors that just, like I said, give me this weird feeling about him to where I'm not willing to risk a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one I'm avoiding is Devontae Adams. Because we think the Bills situation's sketchy. The Raiders, my God, that's a total train wreck over there. I mean, Josh Jacobs holding out, might not play week 1, in which case they're going to really, defenses are really going to be on Devontae Adams. And I know last year he was able to do his thing despite not having much support, but he had Derek Carr last year, who was someone he had chemistry with dating back to college. This year, he's got Jimmy Garoppolo, someone he's never caught passes from, and just his whole attitude this offseason was not positive about it. Whenever all this in free agency went down, he put on his Instagram stories like, "No one hit me up about this." Like basically just like, and I took from that he was mad. Like I don't think he was happy with what the Raiders did. I think what he was hoping for that they would go out and get Aaron Rodgers and reunite him with Aaron Rodgers, but instead, they get Jimmy G, who when healthy is okay, but he's nothing special. And that's why I say when healthy, is that there's a chance he misses games. He's missed games pretty much every year of his career to where then it'll be on your boy Gabe, Hoyer the Destroyer. And I don't think Devontae's going to be too thrilled about catching passes from him, a career backup who's become one of the worst backups in the league. Someone, if you have to turn to him, you're shaking in your boots because you're just like, well, my season's over. So to me, the Raiders season's already over. They're one of the worst teams on paper. They've got some big names. They're kind of like the Rams. I'm not as big on Cooper Kupp, but y'all already know my thoughts on Cooper Kupp, which I think the thing with Cooper Kupp, it's like at least with Stafford, it's like a healthy Stafford. I feel like better than a healthy Jimmy. A healthy Jimmy G is just, even that's not that exciting. When it comes to Devontae Adams, he's going to decline this year. I feel like his age is getting up there. And they brought in Jacoby Myers, might not get quite as many targets as last year to make up for I don't think he's going to be very efficient in this offense. His offense sucks. And so, yeah, I hate to be down on one of the all-time greats. He's probably a future Hall of Famer, Devontae Adams is. But for this year, for fantasy, I'm just not liking what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned Devontae Adams maybe not being as efficient this year. I just don't think efficient is going to be in the Raiders' vocabulary this year. Maybe Josh Jacobs will perform, but
if he plays, that's another thing. If Jacobs doesn't
play, that's a whole other situation going on. But yeah, I'm like you. I'm avoiding the Raiders and their players like the plague this year. Although you could talk me into Jacoby Myers at the right price at the right time in the draft, but still, you'd have to talk me into it.
Yeah, he goes pretty late. So yeah, with Devontae Adams, you're having to pay basically first round value for him, where you can wait and get like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. Yeah, they don't have quite the proven track record of Devontae Adams, but they've got the elite skill sets. They're young. They're in good situations. So I'd say do that. If you're at that spot, I'd take a guy like CD instead of Devontae. And then I wouldn't take Devontae till the end of the second at the earliest, but he usually goes before that. So I don't think I'll have to worry about having that decision because he should be going. But let's talk mid-round receivers here. The guys in the middle rounds, those ever-important middle rounds where your league can be won or lost. So I'm going to start off here. Jerry Jeudy is my target at the end of the 5th round. I feel like he's somebody that's getting not enough praise because last year, even in that broken Nathaniel Hackett offense in Denver, he still almost got 1,000 yards and missed a handful of games. If he plays all the games in Sean Payton's system, he might be a WR1. I'll just say it right now. I like what I'm seeing from Jeudy. And with Russ, it's like, it was Russ great? No, but he can still cook enough to support 1 or 2 quality receivers. And Jeudy, not sure who the 2 will be, whether it'll be Sutton, Tim Patrick, or the rookie Marvin Mims, but I can guarantee that Jeudy will be heavily involved and will be the top target there, as he's clearly the top talent. And the only thing holding him back is health. And I'm going to bank on a healthy season from him. I believe it's his contract year this year. So I'm going to say he's going to play. I'm going to say he plays most of the games and produces well in what should be an improved offense.
Yeah, for sure. There's been a lot of talk about the Broncos offloading one of their 2 receivers, either Jeudy or Sutton. They haven't done either to this point.
They're not unloading Jeudy.
Even then, it wasn't going to be Jeudy because,
yeah,
he's just got so much upside. And when you add Sean Payton into the equation, add in the fact that Russ can't be as bad as he was last year, add in the fact that he didn't play every game last year. There's a lot to like about Jerry Jeudy. He's getting another year of experience. Yeah, like you mentioned, he's a big-time player. And even in an offense that might not be the best, he's a big-time player who can seriously produce in fantasy.
100%. As you like Tyler Lockett, who's going around later, have some new competition for targets this year, though, in Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I'm guessing that doesn't scare you too much.
It doesn't scare me too much first year. I'm very glad, Spencer, that you prefaced this with the fact that it's redraft season. So I didn't have to sit here and explain that I'm not taking Tyler Lockett in dynasty leagues. I like the value here with Tyler Lockett. This is a dude who I think for the last 4 seasons has put up 1,000 yards. He had 9 touchdown grabs, I believe, last season. I mean, there's just in this end of the 6th round, that's way too much value for a guy like Tyler Lockett. Even when you do factor in that they got Jackson Smith and Jigba to compete with him for targets. I just think Tyler Lockett hasn't shown any signs of slowing down yet. And I think until that happens, especially in the late 6th round, I'm going to take that value all day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the 6th round, is like, I wouldn't say it's like too steep, but it seems like a tad steep considering you got the all the competition now. Well, it's still going to be a pretty run-heavy offense. Pete Carroll's offense is always pretty run-heavy, so it's like I feel like someone's going to kind of – it might be DK Metcalf. I'm not really targeting him either because it's like we don't know which one might fall off. If anything, Tyler Lockett's the more reliable one. It's just the thing, though, that's a little concerning with Lockett is his age. He hadn't really shown it yet, but this might be the year that he does with, like, with JSN in there. It's like maybe the Seahawks are kind of seeing the handwriting on the wall with a potential decline. But I feel like, though, at the right price, at like early 7th, I'd probably like it better because JSN is an elite talent. He will be involved as a rookie. But I can see where you're going with this because DK Metcalf hadn't been the alpha one like we were thinking he would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, I mean, if you look at the ADP of the 2 guys that we have in red, I like Tyler Lockett more than DJ Moore a round and a half earlier, and I like him a lot more than Michael Pittman, who's 5 or 6 spots later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a hot take. You're in agreement with my buddy Justin from Fantasy Follow. He had Lockett ranked over DJ Moore in our consensus wide receiver rankings that y'all can go check out on Instagram there at Spencer the Guru over on Instagram. Got tight ends dropping later today. We had receivers yesterday. They got a lot of buzz and debate. People are getting on me saying I was crazy and but I was just like, hey, I mean, they're getting on me about Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, but I told them that, I'm projecting forward. We got to look ahead. This isn't of what have you done for me in the past. This is a what are you going to do for me in 2023 list. Like this isn't. I don't care about. I mean, you obviously got to factor in resume, but I mean, I'm not as sympathetic to resume as some analysts. Oh, well, you can't disrespect Cooper Kupp like that. Well, I mean, I got these young guys are on the rise, man. I'm projecting forward, not backwards. But anyway.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind with these people. If you want to see their stats from 2022, go look at ESPN's wide receiver rankings list. Don't go to Spencer the Guru looking for stats from last year. We're only looking forward.
Exactly. So yeah, my list is definitely more bold than ESPN's, but I feel like it's more accurate at the end of the day because it factors in a lot more. It doesn't try to just play it safe. We factor in coaching changes, personnel changes, offensive line, quarterback. We factor in the whole shebang with it. We don't just look at the stats. We look at why the stats happened as they did. There's always a why to these stats. It's not good to just look at the stats and be like, oh, well, that's the way it is. Baseball and basketball, probably more so like that. But with football, you got to look at it's so many variables as far as how players perform. I feel like football's the most, when it comes to fantasy, the most dependent on the player's performance is most dependent on the teammates around him. So you got to factor all that stuff in when doing the rankings. But DJ Moore, though, new team for him. Headed to Chicago. I think he could do pretty well there. Justin Fields throwing to him. ADP a little steep. So Gabe Gabe's out, it looks like, on DJ.
Yeah, I'm not so much out on DJ as I am DJ's situation. I'm just, until I see it, I'm not trusting Justin Fields in the passing game just yet. I mean, I'm not comparing apples to apples here when I'm saying look at Claypool and last year, because DJ Moore is twice the receiver that Chase Claypool is, if not more. But no pun intended. But yeah, I'm not going to believe that DJ Moore can rack up 1,000 yards with Justin Fields. And this is a guy who's kind of teetered on the brink of a elite wide receiver too over the last few years, but he's never giving you that consistency per se. He's a little too inconsistent for me. And I think when you go to a passing game, that's the model of inconsistency. I'm not touching it in the first year. I could see it working, but I'm just one of those people. I'm not going to take a gamble in the early 5th round on a guy on a new team with an unproven passing quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd much rather him in best ball, regular leagues. It's like he's going to have some weeks where the Bears, it's a work in progress passing game where they're going to have some dud weeks, I'm sure. Kind of like Christian Watson. I feel like him and Christian Watson are very similar, kind of like how the Packers passing game work in progress with Jordan Love. So to me, I like both of them in best ball a lot, because it's like with best ball, you don't have to set the lineup. So if they do really well, cool. If not, then you'll probably use one of your bench guys. But in regular, where you have to set your lineup leagues, you're probably pulling your hair out with guys like this if you take them too high and feel like they're someone you have to start. Where if you take DJ Moore like in the 6th as opposed to the 5th, you'll be like, yeah, I took him kind of high, but if he starts all slower, so I won't feel like obligated to start him. Where if you take someone in the first 5, you tend to be like, well, I gotta start them, and it's like, and if they don't perform, you're just like, what do I do? So yeah, ADP probably a little too high, but I do like the prospects there with Fields. I think he could have a big second half. He's someone, if you draft him, be patient, because I think Fields is only improving as a quarterback, even though Jim Derry doesn't seem to think so.
I'm not going to be as extreme as Jim. I think there's room to improve there, and I think he will improve. I'm not ready to take DJ Moore in the 5th round to wait on a project. Your 5th round pick should not be a wait and see. It should be a guy that's going to contribute from day one.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of a project, man, Anthony Richardson to Michael Pittman, that is going to be ugly, y'all. That's why I don't want any part of Michael Pittman. I think the Colts passing game might end up the worst in the NFL this year. I really do. I think, if anything, they might just start Gardner Minshew more, but it's like, I mean, no disrespect to the mustache king, but it's just like he is what he is. He's a backup quarterback. Like, it's not going to be pretty, but it could help Pittman at least be decent. But the thing is, though, I think they're going to turn to Richardson fairly early in the year, because this is a rebuilding year in Indy. I don't think they're hiding it. I think it's even more of a rebuild for them than the Texans, because at least the Texans were able to get a lot of good young pieces, where the Colts are still stuck with guys that they had under contract from the old regime, guys like Shaquille Leonard, that it's like, probably aren't going to be very good. So they're going to be in for a rough one, I feel like. So Michael Pittman, I just don't want any part of it. Don't know how he's going to gel with the new quarterbacks. Plus the offense itself, I think, is going to just be really crappy, to where last year he was very dependent on receptions, but he had the old man Matt Ryan throwing to him, old noodle arm. Anthony Richardson's got a cannon arm, but he's going to try to chuck it down, but it's going to be a lot of misses down the field. And so this is a situation I just am not messing with. It's not a knock on Pittman as a talent. It's more the situation. Pittman's a solid talent, but I feel like last year we were taking him way too high. His draft price got way out of control. So I feel like now it's kind of come back down, but still not down enough for me to take him, because I just don't like the year one of his new offense, and I just think it's going to be an ugly one for the passing attack. Kind of like the Bears last year. I think the Colts are going to be last year's Bears.
Yeah, for sure. And, hindsight's 2020. So when we talk about his ADP last year, I still think he had a decent campaign, all things considered. We also thought that Matt Ryan was going to light it up in Indy last year, and that took about 3 or 4 games to disprove. But yeah, I think it'll take a little while there. Michael Pittman can still get his, but just similar to my DJ Moore pick. I think he's a solid receiver. I don't like what they have going on in the passing game as a whole.
Yeah, pretty rough there. But let's move on to our late round targets. And I could not believe this, that Sky Moore's ADP is still in the 14th round. I mean, come on, y'all. Wake up, man. This dude is foul. I think they're going to wake up now that Kadarius Toney's injured. So this ADP will not be down this. I bet it's going to be up into the 10th round here pretty soon, because Sky Moore is someone that even before Toney's injury, I thought could be a significant piece of this Chiefs offense. But now that Toney's down, I really look for Sky Moore to take over Juju's role from last year. Kelsey's still going to be the alpha, but Juju's role was solid. He was a solid number 2, and that's what I think Sky Moore is going to be. And so he's a guy I think that's going to get around 800 to 900 yards. And you're getting him basically for free. Like, I mean, how is this happening, y'all? I mean, Patrick Mahomes will get his. Someone's going to get theirs for the Chiefs. And to me, it's Sky Moore. They spent a high draft pick on him last year. He didn't do much last year, but we all know Andy Reid doesn't like rookies, which is why I'm preferring Sky Moore over Rashee Rice, even though Rashee Rice is a guy that maybe with the Toney injury could also do pretty well, even though Reed normally doesn't like rookies. It's just I think he'll give the edge to Sky Moore, who knows the system now as a year in it, got some experience under his belt. So I'm going to take the chance here, and I think it's basically no risk. It's basically a no-risk ticket for something that could be, flex worthy.
Yeah, for sure. This is in the 14th round. It's about as no risk can get.
Yeah, and it makes no sense how it's like, to me, I was taking him. I was like, well, if you take him, if you want to take him like in the 9th or 10th round, it might be a little steep, but I wouldn't fault you. Where this is just like, are you kidding me? Well, a lot of times I felt like the sweet spot was like the 11th or 12th. So, but yeah, a lot of these guys going in that similar range. So you got Rondale Moore there as your target, who's going in the middle of the 14th. Cardinals passing game looking ugly, but outside of Hollywood Brown, they don't really have much there. Zach Ertz is old and coming off injury, so even with Kyler's injury, you still think Rondale could do well?
I think so. And, as we just talked about in the 14th round, it's free. It's hit or miss. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Rondale Moore who had he played in 8 games last year. 4 of the 8 games, he was ranked in or near the top 25 for receiver rankings. So if you can get a guy who's relatively consistently in the top 25 each week, I know he's coming off an injury, but if he can stay healthy, it's worth the reach in the 14th round. I mean, you're not going to get many other better receivers or receivers who have better projections than Rondale Moore. Just a lot of people forget about him because, as you mentioned, Kyler's going to be out. The Cardinals passing game looks terrible outside of Hollywood Brown. So I think Rondale Moore could really be a solid number 2 on bye weeks where for your other receivers. This is one of those guys that you might slot into play. You just leave on your bench, but he can break out in any given week. So if he has those good weeks, I think it's worth a flyer.
Hell yeah. Yeah, could. Yeah, definitely at that price point could be. And yeah, we'll see who ends up the quarterback there early. That might kind of play a factor in it for me. I'd almost rather it be probably Colt McCoy. And they're talking about maybe Clayton Tune from Houston, but I'd probably rather the think and dunk veteran as opposed to the young guy who's going to probably try to do too much. But
and let's be honest with ourselves, Spencer. You're not starting any 14th round in the first few weeks.
Yeah.
So if you're taking Rondale Moore, he's going to sit on your bench. Just kind of let it ride while he comes back from injury, while Kyler comes back from injury, and just see where it takes you.
Yeah, agreed. And I see you're down on Nico Collins, who's someone that I kind of like there late, because I don't really feel like they don't have, C.J. Stroud didn't really have much else there in Houston. But you're the Texans guy, Gabe, so explain why you're avoiding Nico.
Yeah, we've just heard, at least here in Houston, and I know some fantasy gurus, so to speak, not speaking directly at you. They love Nico Collins for his physical attributes. He's a tall, physical receiver who can go up and get the ball. We just haven't really seen him do that over the last few years. He's had flashes in the pan, few good games here and there. And I know, trust me, as a Houston fan, I know who's been throwing to him. It's been Davis the Giraffe Mills, and C.J. Stroud is a huge upgrade. But there's other receivers I like in Houston, especially if you're trying to reach on a Texans receiver late. I like the prospect of John Mechie, who's coming back. I like Tank Dell. I know he's a rookie that everyone's high on. And hell, I might even take a flyer on a Robert Woods resurgence over Nico Collins. I mentioned earlier, I have to see it to believe it. And I think there is talent in Nico Collins, but until I see it, I'm just not really going to believe all the hype yet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's going really late. A lot of these Texans guys, we don't know who's going to emerge, but yeah, got to keep an eye on camp before we plant our flag too heavily with any of those guys. Got to see who Stroud takes a liking to. But I'm avoiding Rashad Bateman. I feel like him and Lamar Jackson never really got time to develop chemistry after Bateman. The injury after injury, he's barely played. He's been 2 years in the league, hadn't even come close to playing a full season. And he's already on the PUP list. So I just think it's going to be yet another lost season for him. He's going to be behind Odell Beckham, going to be behind Mark Andrews, going to be behind Zay Flowers, the rookie. I just don't want any part of this guy. Unless Odell would get hurt, which very well could happen, then Bateman would have a role. But Bateman himself could get hurt, to where then it might be Devin Duvernay season again. But I think at that point, Zay Flowers is going to run away as the clear number 2 to Lamar. Andrews is number 1 at tight end, and then Flowers be the top receiving option. I feel like really like him. If we had another tier for this, I'd put Zay Flowers as a target. I'm really hot on the rookie this year. He might be my favorite rookie to target out of all the rookie receivers. But Bateman, on the other hand, don't want any part of it. I think it's just, if you're Baltimore, you've got to chalk it up as a bust. I mean, Zay Flowers is your guy now. You got to hope that he pans out, because Bateman surely hasn't.
I was surprised, Spencer, to hear you say, or not hear you say, that Zay Flowers is your favorite target in Baltimore, period, because I know you're not high on Odell either.
Oh, yeah, he is. Yeah, no, I think Odell might start off as their top target, but I'm definitely taking Flowers over Odell. I got Flowers ranked over Odell.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Gonna have a lot of changes. Next week we'll do running backs, targets, avoids, then quarterbacks and tight ends, and then we'll, at that point, once we get done with that, then we'll have our basically just we'll be doing rankings, mocks, and just at that point it'll be about draft season. It'll probably almost be more of a Q&A session at that point, because I'm sure y'all are gonna have a lot of draft questions come the middle of August. But let's get to our rants here to close this one out. And by the way, if y'all have any questions, for those that have stuck with us all this time, feel free to drop them in. But
yeah, I was going to say one more thing on the Ravens, Spencer.
Yeah.
This is a personal thought. I wonder if we see another injury in the Ravens passing game. I wonder if we don't see Isaiah Likely get more involved over one of those guys like Devin Duvernay.
Yeah, he could. They run a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. So yeah, Likely another name to keep an eye on. We'll get to that soon when we talk tight ends. But yeah, Gabe's ran here. Don't be like NFL owners during your fantasy drafts.
Yeah, Spencer, I know we're 2 people who just we're tired of hearing about all the latest trends in fantasy and all this kind of stuff, where these people think they have the hottest new ideas. And let me just tell you, I am so sick of hearing about the no running back drafts, where they just draft wide receivers and then take these number 2 running backs, backup guys like AJ Dillon as their RB1. You're not going to win a fantasy championship with AJ Dillon as your number 1 back. Come on. So what I'm saying here, I feel like this is a topical rant, especially after, you alluded to the Austin Eckler Zoom call and Saquon Barkley not getting his long-term deal. Don't be like the NFL owners. Don't neglect these running backs, because running backs, I feel now more than ever this season, are few and far between, especially up at the top level. So don't be one of these people who, let me not draft running backs, because I can almost guarantee you it's not going to work. If you're playing with a bunch of bozos, it might. But I'm here to tell you, it's not going to work. You're not going to win a championship that way. There might be people who claim they did it, but if anyone thinks that they won a championship with a no running back draft without trading for a big name, I would love to see the running backs on your roster, because I guarantee you have some people who are better than these trends of the no running back roster. And one last point here. I saw probably the dumbest thing I've ever seen today. I saw something, it's a new trend this year. Apparently, it's league winning in 2023. So, hot off the press, Spencer, the RB squared strategy. People are taking running backs in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see that. Yeah. Robust RB, they call it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't do that either. I love running
Yeah.
backs.
I've been
I
seeing that.
value I value him more than anyone else on my fantasy team, probably, admittedly. I carry about 5 or maybe even 6 on a good year on my roster. Admittedly, I probably carry too many, but don't draft them in your first 3 rounds either, please.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I've been doing some kind of wonky strategies on these mock drafts, but just trying them out. And, honestly, I did robust RB a couple weeks ago. This week I did basically 0 RB. It was super flex. So I took 2 quarterbacks, 2 receivers. My RB1 was Damian Pierce, which I wasn't even that mad about considering I got stud receivers and quarterbacks. So, a lot of it comes down to best player available. And the thing with running backs in fantasy as opposed to real life, they're you got to start 2. In real NFL, you only have 1. In this, you have 2. So it's like, yeah, and there's less workhorses nowadays. So it's like you can't just avoid this position because it's the same thing with like in quarterback league, like single quarterback, you can kind of get away with waiting on a quarterback. But in 2 quarterback leagues, you can't play that game, and you got to have at least 1 really good quarterback. Just like in these, most leagues where you got to start 2 running backs, you need at least 1 really good running back. So it's like the same thing with receivers. 0 receivers, people are trying that, but I mean in PPR leagues that doesn't work either. So yeah, just stick to the script. Best player available, which gets to my rant. Perfect segue to my rant here about going with the flow of the draft. Y'all don't be a slave to this ADP data or rankings, even though it's something we take a lot of pride in. I know I do with my rankings each year, but it's like with the way these drafts go, y'all. You want a cheat sheet, but you don't want to just treat it like the Bible. You want you use it as a guide, not as an end all be all. Because it's like sometimes the way a draft flows, right? Like you have a big tight end run. And let's just say, like, not that I'm saying to reach on a tight end, but it's like if you're in a league where they're taking a lot of tight ends in order to avoid like the dumpster, to be in the dumpster at the position. Like if you think a guy like David Njoku could break out, and potentially be top 5. Don't be afraid to take him a little earlier than usual if you see the way to tight ends, if they're flying off the board, just kind of seeing how these things go, because then it's like it won't really hurt you that much because then everyone else has done it, and then you can still get good skill guys later. So it's like, kind of just go with the flow, stick to your board, stick to best player available, but you might have to make some adjustments along the way to where it's like, you gotta be flexible, gotta be, open-minded. And I think a balanced approach works best. It usually does, but sometimes if people are going crazy over the receiver, sometimes it might be best to take more running backs early. I normally prefer the receivers, but if they're taking them like insanely high, sometimes I might take 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds. Not that that's really my plan, but if they're the best players available, then that's what I'll do. So, and the tight ends thing, like I honestly like, unless there's someone like if they took the guy I'm targeting, then at that point you can just go 0 or whatever at the position. If you let everyone else reach on that position, get your good skill guys, and then and even though your rankings are like, oh well, I don't have a tight end 1. Oh no, it's like, well, the tight end number 12 on the list is probably much different than the tight end number 15. So like I said, just don't trip if your team doesn't line up exactly the way the list says it should, because and also with this ADP data, it's like every league's different. Every league is different minds in there. So just because what this ADP data says, oh, you can do, oh, if you like a player, take them. Oh, I can wait on them. Their ADP's low. Well, if someone else in your league likes them, you're not going to get them. So Don't go too wild about this ADP stuff. It's just using it as a guide. It's not set in stone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're talking fantasy football, you can read as many mock drafts, you can look at as many different sites, ADPs as you want. You in a standard league, 12 team, 16 places on your team, there are 12 to the 16th factorial different combinations of things that people can do, and probably even more when you factor in all the different players. But I'm no mathematician, so I'm not really trying to do that math. But if you Google 12 to the 16th factorial, Spencer, you're going to get a huge number, an incomparable number. So don't even try and limit yourself because of how many mock drafts you've listened to, you're partaken in. Just go with the flow of the draft. Every single one will be different.
Definitely. Yeah, because you could be listening to a certain podcast, and if they like a certain player, then you're going to be more likely to take them. And then you're going to be like, and all your friends are going to look at you like, why'd you take this guy so high? And then they're like, oh, you've been listening to something. And then if you like a player that the podcast is telling you, oh, you probably shouldn't take them that high, then then your friends will probably take them because then you've been getting kind of, so listen to these shows. I even like our show, listen to us, but don't don't just just unless you're really just a beginner, don't like change your whole philosophy.
Our word is not the gospel.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think value is more important than position? Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I'm willing to go 0 QB if the QBs are going way too high. Yeah. Yeah, I don't get scared by that. I don't get scared of the runs. I take note of the runs because if I see a run, then I'm like, well, if I like a player at this position, I might have to reach on them a little bit. But if there aren't any players at this position that I like, if they're all the ones I like are gone at that point because of the run, then I'm just like, well, I'll just wait till like the 12th round or something to get a quarterback. No point in reaching on someone I don't even want just because of a run,
Exactly.
So, all right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up. Appreciate everyone that tuned in to this week's Fantasy Roundup. We'll be back next week breaking down the running back position. But until then, this has been Spencer and Gabe. Peace out.